Cave exploring has been around as long as people have been able to move. It seems that, well, to many of us, the idea of being trapped in a cave with no light and no room to move sounds straight out of our nightmares. Some are endlessly drawn to the adventure of discovering a place that has never been touched. There's a lot on this planet to be discovered, and while most of the time everything works out, there's still a few horror stories to tell. Today, we'll take a look at one of those horror stories and a legacy that was left behind by the brave. Let's talk about the tragic death of Floyd Collins. Floyd was born July 20th, 1887, on a farm in Logan County, Kentucky. He was the third of 8 children, and from an early age, he took a great interest in exploring caves. At just age 6, Floyd began exploring caves by his home in search of Native American artifacts to sell to tourists at the Mammoth Cave Hotel, which is a crazy thing for a 6-year-old to want to do. This pastime led to the discovery of his first cave when he was just 23, when he found the Donkey's Cave in 1910 on his family's farm. Just 2 years later, Floyd was hired by geologist Edmund Turner to show him caves in the region. This partnership led to the discovery of 2 more caves, the Dossey's Cave in 1912 and the Great Onyx Cave in 1915. So by the age of 28, he was well on his way to becoming a great cave explorer. His hobby had become more of a career when, in September of 1917, Floyd noticed a cool air coming from a hole in the ground on Collins' farm, and he discovered a sinkhole that led to another cave, in which he named the Great Crystal Cave. This was the first cave that Floyd decided to commercialize, and by April of 1918, the cave was open to the public and presented as a tourist attraction. Cave tourism, at the time, was a very lucrative and competitive business in an era known as the Cave Wars. Unfortunately, Floyd's cave wouldn't be very profitable. An ambitious accomplishment, but due to the remote location of the cave, it never really saw big numbers. Still, this was quite a feat for a young cave explorer. Floyd was on a mission to find more cave entrances around his property and draw in more traffic. He would talk to business owners and landowners surrounding the area and made agreements that allowed him to explore closer to the main highway. In doing so, he found another cave, later labeled the Sand Cave, and within 3 weeks, he had expanded the discovery hole enough to get through and properly explore. On January 30th, 1925, Floyd entered the cave armed with only a single kerosene lamp that was giving him some problems right away. This cave was not dug out. It had been a new discovery, so the passageway was narrow and unpredictable. He managed to squeeze past several passages, one of which was reported to be no larger than 9 inches tall. But after several hours of exploring, he found himself in a passage so narrow he had to push himself forward on his stomach with a hand out in front of him shoving the lamp. He managed to get to an opening, but his problems only increased as the lamp began to flicker. Not looking to continue his exploration in the dark, Floyd attempted to get back out of the cave, but he became thoroughly trapped in a passage. In his struggle, he knocked over the fading lamp, managing to put it out completely. If it wasn't enough, his foot found an unstable 27-pound rock in the wall, which then shifted, pinning his leg down. To add insult to injury, this shift caused gravel to become loose and started to bury him. Now he was pinned down in a narrow passage that was only 150 feet from the entrance in the dark. Things were looking bad fast. Neighbors noticed Floyd had not returned from his expedition the next day and headed out to find him. While no one wanted to brave the tiny passages, they were able to call out to Floyd and confirm that he was indeed stuck in there. Floyd's brother Homer was called to the scene, where he was the first one who would squeeze through the narrow passage to bring Floyd food and water to keep his energy levels up. But alone, he couldn't dislodge his brother. By February 2nd, 3 days after he went in, plans began to arise to pull him out with brute force, rope, and harnesses. Instead of freeing Floyd, this attempt only injured him when he was shoved up against the rocky ceiling of the passage, and they had to abandon the plan. The next plan was to dig him out, so an electric light was sent down to him, which did provide some much-needed vision and warmth. The attention of this misfortune attracted all kinds of inexperienced cave explorers to stand around the mouth of a cave like they were watching some dude grill up some backyard burgers. It was in the middle of winter. Temperatures were dropping into the 20s, so to keep warm, these onlookers built campfires around the entrance, which melted the ice within and formed cold puddles, one of which Floyd found himself laying in. Thanks, guys. That really helped. Thousands of sightseers came to get a peek at the tragedy, as now reporters were making Floyd's survival a national story. On February 4th, the passage began to collapse in multiple places, and time was against them. Using equipment from the entrance of the cave was not possible, as cold air was being drawn inward, and any use of these machines would suffocate Floyd with the fumes they caused. The next plan was to dig straight down to him and pull him up that way. So 75 workers got to work. At the rate of 2 feet per hour, they started to dig a shaft right above him. By 15 feet, the workers hit boulders, so they pulled out the pickaxes and manually chipped away at them. There were 30-hour workdays and progress was slow, but they were determined to keep going. While they remained hopeful, however, Floyd had gone silent, and they weren't even sure if the man they were trying to rescue was still alive. A radio amplifier jerry-rigged to the light bulb by Floyd was sent down to the trapped man, and a scientist believed that the amplifier could detect vibrations whenever Floyd moved. Throughout the rescue effort, the amplifier crackled 20 times, leading them all to believe that he was still moving down there. However, on February 16th, 18 days after he went in, they finally broke through, and what they found was disheartening. Floyd was cold, and miner Ed Brenner identified that he had passed due to exposure, exhaustion, and starvation. They estimated that he had been dead for 3 to 5 days. Floyd's body remained in the cave when his funeral service was conducted on the surface. His brother was not okay with Sand Cave being Floyd's tomb, which it was later labeled, so he and some friends reopened the shaft. They dug a new tunnel to the opposite side of the cave passage, and on April 23, 1925, they recovered the body of Floyd Collins. He was properly buried on a hillside over Great Crystal Cave, which was renamed Floyd Collins Crystal Cave. Unfortunately, that wasn't the end, as 2 years later his dad, Lee Collins, sold the family farm and cave to Dr. Harry Thomas, a dentist who also owned other caves in the area. He dug up Floyd and displayed his body in a glass-top coffin in the Crystal Cave for years like a crazy person. In March of 1929, the body was stolen, because of course it was, but it was recovered in a nearby field with the injured left leg missing. Afterwards, the body was put in a chained casket in a secluded area of Crystal Cave, still on display, mind you. In 1961, the cave was purchased by Mammoth Cave National Park and closed to the public. The family continually asked for Floyd to be removed from the display, so finally in 1989, they got their wish. 15 men and 3 days of work had the casket and tombstone removed from the cave, and Floyd was finally put to rest at the Mammoth Cave Baptist Church Cemetery. This was a tragic story, demonstrating that no matter how skilled and experienced you are, you're no match for a cave system sometimes. Floyd shouldn't have gone in there alone, with only a lamp to guide him. The crazy amount of disrespect these owners had for his body is wild to me, but hopefully his extended family can rest easier now that he's gotten a proper burial. Thanks for watching. For more true crime and horror, please consider subscribing. Game with me on Twitch, follow me on Twitter, and as always, be well.